Welcome to CropCast, a monthly arable podcast. This podcast pulls together the latest information, expertise and experiences from people in the arable industry.
It's certainly something that an industry that keeps changing all the time. You have to be able to adapt to that change, and that's what keeps it interesting. That's what keeps it exciting, especially with the crops I do are very short windows. You can be for anywhere from 90 to 120 days from planting to production. So you get to see that all the way through the season. It's fast moving and it's always changing. So I think as an industry, I've really enjoyed my time in veg, and I can see myself in it for the long haul. To be honest, it's a vibrant industry, and it's certainly something that I'm really enjoying.
I'm Mark Bowsher-Gibbs, and in today's episode I'm very pleased to have with me Finlay Ross and Andrew Orr from Kettle Produce Ltd. How are you? Hot with you, I presume?
Yeah, we've got a nice bit of sunshine, which is very welcome. We had a bit of a cold early June, which didn't do our crops any favours, so we're glad to see some glorious sunshine today, and it'll be giving the crops a nice little boost.
Yeah, good. So I'm very interested to learn more about your business and the sort of whole operating space around, can I call it vegetable production, or is it horticultural production?
I think sort of vegetable production and packing would sort of summarise the main thing that we do here.
Yeah, as I was saying before we sort of started, tend to concentrate on the sort of white straw crops and traditional break crops, oilseed rape and beans, and it's nice to perhaps chat to you today and find out a bit more about the other vegetable break crop options that you're involved with. If I came to you first, Andrew, and just asked if you could introduce yourself and perhaps your history and how you came to be working with cattle.
Yeah, so my name's Andrew Orr. I'm the head of the agricultural team at Kettle Produce. I've been with the business for just over 5 years now, but prior to that, I've probably accumulated about 20 years worth of experience through different jobs, but mostly in vegetable and potato production in Scotland. So it's I've been around and about Kettle over those 20 years, and then started to work with the business 5 years ago. So the business started back in 1976. There's the three local farmers got together and started off the business. Now it's owned by just one of the three families who originally started it off, the McIntyre family. And back in 1976, the strategy or the intention was to grow vegetable crops to supply retail customers. So over the years, we've grown quite a lot. We supply most of the main supermarkets now. And over that sort of period, our turnovers increased up to just under 200 million. Sort of at the last tally up there. So as I mentioned, founded in 1976, which makes it our 50-year anniversary this year. So quite a big milestone for the business, and we're happy to still be growing and supplying and packing vegetables to a lot of the consumers every day of the week, really.
No, interesting. And we'll talk a bit more about where you're based and the crops you grow in a bit more detail. If I came to you, Finlay, it's nice to see you again. I've worked with you in your previous capacity as a consultant with SAC Consulting, and we were saying that was probably 4 or 5 years ago. So when you left consulting, you went back to practical farming, and how did you land your current position with Kettle Produce?
Yes, so Mark, it's good to see you again. It's been a while since we've had a chat, but I started at Kettle Produce about 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago now. It's going into my 4th season, and I was aware of Kettle, but I didn't quite understand just quite size of a business it is. So I was aware of it. I knew Andrew kind of socially, and a conversation had came up about an opportunity that was happening at Kettle to come on board to be a crop manager, focusing on broccoli and cauliflower and onion production. And as you know, we've talked about, I worked at SEC for a couple of years, and I really enjoyed that. Before that, I was practically working on farms, potato and arable farms in Fife and Perthshire. SEC was kind of a sideways step to see what other side of the industry was out there, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought that actually a slightly more practically based job would be a suit for me, and so far, really enjoying it, and it gives a good blend of kind of a little bit of consultancy, a little bit of practical farming, a bit of farm management, so it ticks quite a few boxes.
Yes, I mean it's a huge business, a lot of labour as well, a lot of logistical issues, I should think, and we'll come on to that later. But you were in the press recently, were you, for an achievement award?
Yes, last year at the Highland Show, I was given M&S kind of up and comer award for the veg sector, which I was very honoured and surprised to win. And it's I can't speak highly enough of the industry that I'm working just now. The veg industry, it's very diverse. It's very small, actually. It is quite a small industry, but it's really enjoyable. So to get a wee recognition was nice.
Yeah, congratulations. It's always nice to get rewarded and noticed for your efforts. So, yeah, well done. So, Andrew, going back to sort of where you're based and the sort of hectares involved, could you give us a sort of idea of the scale of the business from that point of view?
So the office or the office, and we've got 2 factory sites in Fife, and just based outside Cooper, and a lot of the production is round about this area. We've over the years, obviously, that's where they started, and we're quite blessed in this part with very fertile, sandy loam soils, which are suitable for growing vegetables on. Also got a lot of access to water for irrigation. Obviously, we've got when we've got weather like this, irrigation is really important to keep vegetable crops surviving and growing on as they should. So, most of the production is around about Fife, Perthshire. We've got production in East Lothian, and then sort of a bit further afield, we grow late season carrots up in Aberdeenshire, and then sort of at the other end of the carrot season, we grow early carrots down in the southwest of Scotland, down in Girvan, with a grower down there. We cover a large proportion of the east coast, with the token bit over on the west coast. We've also got sort of other strategic parts of the UK that help support our shoulders of the season, really. So we'll bring some of our earliest crops up from some of the very early bits in England, Norfolk and Suffolk, just for a short window until we can commence production up here. So in Scotland, we're probably just under 3,000 hectares of production, wide range of vegetable crops, but we would sort of classify them into 2 main sort of categories, and that's roots and brassicas. So root crops, basically carrots, parsnip, swede, and we grow a wide range of brassicas, so broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, quite a few different species of cabbage, and then we also grow a little bit of salads as well. So we grow some iceberg and romaine lettuce, which is for supplying to a customer for sort of Scottish stores on lettuce. So that's the kind of main crops that we grow. The biggest out of all of those is probably carrots. So there's about 1,500 hectares of carrots grown annually in Scotland for us to use. So Yeah.
That's a huge area, isn't it? I think. So I mean, yeah, it's hard to get your head around. I mean, it's such a complex array of crops. How do you work out rotational aspects and your sort of relationships with farmers about where they fit in the rotation? Um, I presume are all crops sort of needing a sort of 5-6 year break, or?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a pool of our sort of growing structure. We have, I think at the last count, we've got 43 growers who grow for us, and they will grow. Some might grow a mix of those crops that I've mentioned. Some might just grow one of those crops that I mentioned, and from a small grower maybe growing. I think our smallest grower might be growing 5 hectares, for example. Our largest grower could be up at like 400 hectares probably as the biggest grower, and they might be growing all the crops that I've mentioned. So yeah, we've got that pool of growers. A lot of them have been growing for Kettle for a number of years. In fact, some have been from the very early years. So we've got growers with almost 50 years of service or growing to the business. And we like to think that we've got, or having that pool of growers, we're sort of in control of their rotation, and we're giving our advice based on best practice on rotations. And brassicas, root crops, they all need a good rotation. And you mentioned 5-6 years. We're actually trying to you can grow them at that rotation, but we're actually we're trying to extend rotations generally across all the crops that we grow. And it really comes down to soil health, and we're trying to look after the soils, protect the soils for the next generation. And by extending a rotation, that's going to do that. There's less chance of build up of pests and disease in the soil with that longer rotation. And yeah, that's what we're trying to advise and work to. Now that won't happen overnight. We're very it'll take probably a generation to get to that place, but that's what we're working towards now as a growing group to get to an ideally a 10-year rotation on all the crops that we're growing.
10 years, okay, yeah. And do you see sort of cover crops coming into your sort of remit in terms of prepping the ground for sort of spring sowing? Is it, or do you tend to standardise how?
Yeah, there's a bit of cover crops growing. We've actually found we have to be very careful with cover crops and where they actually come in the rotation. One, for obviously we're growing brassicas, so we don't want any other sort of brassicas and cover crops to help the club root sort of picture affecting brassicas. And also we found that that certain cover crops, for example, before a sprout crop, will encourage slugs, and we've had problems with slugs on Brussels sprouts if a cover crop. So yeah, we've just got to be very careful and selective on what cover crop we do and where it fits. So we're looking, where we are doing that, we're looking at more cereal based sort of cover crops during the winter than any sort of the other sort of species. But yeah, certainly, we seem to be getting wetter winters, and having that soil, having that the ground cover with something growing over the winter is definitely an advantage for soil erosion, and helps keep the ground a bit drier for working in the springtime.
So Finlay, you mentioned earlier that you sort of had control over 3 crops in particular: broccoli, cauliflower, and onions. And perhaps it'd be interesting just to hone in on those and get an idea of what the sort of farming calendar looks like through the season for those crops, and how you organise your year. I presume you get transplanted plants rather than sowing seed in the spring. So how does that sort of fit in with your schedule of work?
Yes, broccoli and cauliflower are both transplanted. We have a plant raiser we use down in Boston and Lincolnshire, and all the plants are sown there and raised and then brought up to Scotland for planting. The season, planning for, say, the 2026 season has to start, in August and September of 25. You need to kind of be that 6 months in front. The reason for that is they don't have enough time to raise plants in the spring to get them ready for, say, beginning of March. So those plants are actually sown in September, roughly about September for both of them, and carried through the winter, so that they're ready for us to start planting in March. After that, once you get into April, they can start to raise plants in enough time to get them spring sown plants. So that's what it looks like. We have to have our programs in place as much as possible before September and October, so that we can get our sown plans, order our seed, get our sown plans put to our plant raiser to get that first part of the program sorted. So as I say, we start planting in March. Broccoli traditionally goes under polythene and sometimes fleece, whereas cauliflower goes under just fleece. Cauliflower is quite sensitive to stress, and the poly environment can be quite a harsh environment on plants, and cauli doesn't particularly tend to enjoy that, so it goes under fleece. So the first kind of month of our production for both are covered crops, and then we go into open crops after that.
I see. Okay. That's a trend, is it, for sort of spring sowings per se? It's the cover crops that go in first.
The covered crops, yes, covered. So we use, as I say, we use poly and fleece as the two main covers, and then once we're onto that, we call them open crops. But a lot of the time, our growers will use like bird coverings or old swede net is something that we'll use to just protect our plants from pigeon damage, hare damage, stuff like that. So it's quite important that actually it adds quite a lot of cost to the cost of production to cover every acre that we've got, but it's certainly, you get that far more consistent cropping through the summer because you've not had that interference with pigeon pressure and hare pressure and stuff like that.
So it's predominantly for pest control or damage limitation rather than sort of creating the right sort of humidity or growing conditions, as you might put sort of maize under plastic, for example.
So the early part of the program that was under fleece and polythene, that is very much to increase temperature and get the plants moving. So we would look to be getting crop ready for harvest about the middle of June. So we're planting start of March, middle of March, and we'd hope to be early June, middle of June, we would start to be onto production for broccoli and cauliflower and Scottish produce.
I mean, that brings us on to agronomy, which, I mean, I'm basis qualified, but I think it's a lot more straightforward than vegetable basis. Are you guys both basis trained and qualified?
Yeah.
And do you have an additional advisor that comes in for all crops or for specific crops, or do you do it all in house?
We're pretty much all in house. We've got a team of 5 agronomists at the moment covering that area, and they all have their specialist crops. So obviously Finlay looks after broccoli, cauliflower and onions. We've got a couple of guys who look after carrots and parsnips specifically, and then another 2 who look after the other brassica crops, so sprouts, cabbage, and the salad crops. So yeah, we're all in house. As Finlay said, it's quite a small industry, and we've got representation on the sort of the British Carrot Growers Association R&D committee, the Brassica Growers Association R&D committee, and there is that few people within the industry. We're all quite close, although we're working for competing businesses from a supply perspective. Everyone's quite happy to pick up the phone and have a chat about issues that we might be seeing or what have you. But one thing we generally get less problems in Scotland than some of the further into England. We have less issues with aphids up here, less pest pressure, just because it's a bit cooler and a bit more stable temperatures. Very much. All the guys are facts and basis trained, and we deliver that impartial advice to the growers. That's part of being a kettle grower, is that all the agronomic advice comes from in-house and is up to date, because we're only specialising in vegetable crops. We've got the most up to date advice to offer to the growers, and it's up to them then to whoever they source their plant protection products from, on the back of that advice, basically.
And are you being sort of constrained by EU legislation and the sort of the loss of approvals on some of these products? Where is that hitting you, and is it hitting you in any particular types of crops?
Yeah, very much so, and it's probably across all crops. As we see, the UK align with Europe on pesticide approvals. We've just yesterday had a list of new active ingredients that are being pulled in Europe, and obviously with us aligning, they're going to go in the UK too. So. I think we've had an insecticide which will go in 2027, which covers most of the crops that we grow. We've got a very good herbicide which will affect potatoes growers as well, metribuzin. We use that in carrots, and it's one of our key weed control chemicals for controlling weeds post-emergence in carrots. So we'll be losing that in 2027. So yeah, very much a very concerning area for us going forward as we lose more plant protection products.
Yeah, I mean, our agronomists within SAC, we sort of have regular sort of spring or seasonal updates from manufacturers. I presume, do they come and talk to you in the same way and advise what sort of?
Yep. Yeah, we have those winter meetings with all the manufacturers, kind of come and visit, and it's a good way to get a few basis points as well, and sometimes get a free lunch out of it.
That's true. Pest monitoring. I mean, there's some IPM. I mean, and you're audited. Well, your assurance schemes, I presume, delve into IPM, integrated pest management. Have you seen sort of changes? Is that coming to the fore more with the loss of approvals? Are there things that you can do? Sort of, I notice in sort of potatoes, you've got the sort of beetle bank strips down the middle. I mean, are there sort of IPM practices that you're?
Yeah, and we've probably been on that journey for upward of 10, 15 years sort of time scale. For example, on carrots we do inter-row cultivations for weed control. We do inter-row band spraying with glyphosate. We've got a lot of growers set up now with pretty fancy camera guided machines that can spray glyphosate just in between the rows of carrots and parsnips. Likewise with a sort of manual cultivator, and these are all two massive parts of our armory now. With obviously with losing herbicides, heaven forbid the glyphosate thing, but it's probably a discussion for another day, that one. But we're hoping we'll keep that for a while to come yet. And those are two pieces of equipment that are pretty critical in growing those two crops now. And a stage on from that is we've this spring invested in a robotic laser weeder on carrots. So we've got a fully autonomous machine that will actually go up and down the beds of carrots by itself, and it fires out a laser at the weeds to burn the weeds basically, and that can actually control weeds that are in the carrot row. The accuracy is down to, I think, 2 millimeters, I think it can zap a weed beside a carrot plant. So all these things are coming. Technology, we're embracing technology wherever we can, and it's going to be a big part of vegetable production going forward. A lot of these things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Finlay, for the crops that you manage, what sort of resources are you managing in terms of labour and machinery? Do farmers sort of do their own spraying, or do you do it for them, or is it a mix of everything? And how do you manage sort of to get everything together for harvesting? You must have quite a high labour requirement.
Yeah, so it works differently for some of our different crops, but for certainly broccoli and cauliflower, the growers provide the land, they provide the machinery, the labour, and they do all the spraying and fertilising and stuff like that, and do the harvesting. Where we come into it is we'll organise that programme that I spoke about, that planting programme through the summer. We'll organise that, we'll design that to tailor with what sales that we have coming into the business. We'll source all the seed, we'll do all the plant raising, organising, as in getting that sorted and figured out. And then we do all the agronomy right through to harvest. And then we've also got a harvest manager, so it's a different side of the crop. We have a harvest manager who roams the countryside of Scotland relentlessly, walking cauliflower and broccoli, and giving us a forecast. So we need to have a forecast, but it's having a forecast for this week's great, but we should have had that 2-3 weeks ago. So we need to be able to see the foresight of, have we got some slight dips in production, have we got some spikes in production, and try and smooth those out as best we can.
So your growers are quite vested in what they do in terms of investment in machinery. Would that be a fair comment?
Yes, absolutely. It's a huge investment from our grower group for whatever crop that they're growing. For example, the carrot harvesting guys, the carrot growers, they'll plant their crop and they'll spray their crop, but we harvest it internally. We've got our own harvesting team, so it differs between different crops. But certainly, all of our growers, no matter what they're growing, have got a huge investment in what they're producing.
Yeah. And Andrew, do you, with regard to sort of climate change, what sort of challenges are you seeing there? You say most of the crops are irrigated, but are you seeing a difference in how crops are maturing and harvesting dates?
I think the climate change debate is a tricky one, but I do think there's something happening. Now, whether that's down to climate change or other factors, I'm not convinced. But I think from my eyes, we're just seeing much more extreme weather patterns, and that's quite pertinent with what weather we're getting. Outside today, it's probably not too extreme here, but certainly where there's a lot of vegetable production in down south in East Anglia, they're getting 35 to 40 degrees this week, and I think the likelihood of these extreme weather events are much more likely than they were 10-15 years ago, and we have to be able to be resilient to that. We're getting wetter winters and probably drier, hotter summers, and we just need to be able to adapt to that. An example being, obviously we harvest carrots. We harvest carrots 12 months of the year, and obviously we've got to harvest in some trickier conditions during the winter when when there's been a lot of rain, and we're trying to encourage growers or farmers to look at drainage, targeting investment in drainage to make sure that the land is fit during the winter for harvesting those crops. We've definitely got to think differently now to what we did 10 or 15 years ago. And as I mentioned, we're blessed with water availability in Scotland. We can come under restrictions, which we did see for a short spell last year, but it's never really a prolonged restriction that we've seen up here that would impact us in that kind of significant way. And what growers are actually looking at now is investment in boreholes rather than river abstraction. So that's just a bit more secure than being fully reliant on river abstraction. So there's those things going on as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you mentioned carrots all year round. In terms of what your buyers are asking from you in terms of continuity, does that apply to all crops? I mean, when I was down in England, I was very much involved in pears, apples, and cherries, and it was not so much cherries, obviously, but the pears and apples. You had CA storage to take crop right through. Do you have this? Can you control crops in store to that effect?
Not really. So carrots and parsnips are harvested fresh out of the ground, 12 months of the year. We have tried previously to harvest and store carrots for wet weather windows, but and storing them dirty. And we don't, we've tried it and it hasn't been successful. We lose the skin finish once they've been stored for any kind of length of time, and it doesn't meet the retail sort of specification. So, we've got parts of the season where we've now got customers that rather than trying to sort of extend the Scottish season, I'll use carrots as an example again. We've now got our customers sort of who'll consider a short import window now, rather than trying to extend a Scottish carrot season for too long and jeopardise quality. Yield drops, quality drops, and we're better having an import window that sort of ticks those boxes, and it's a more sustainable way of managing that part of the season to do it in that way.
Yeah. Just moving on to staff, I noticed from your website that you have a huge number of staff. I presume most of those are in the packing lines and in the warehouses. Do you get involved? I mean, do you sort of hand over once crops harvested and it's in the packing sheds? I presume you can't do everything. Or do you get involved in? I suppose you must want to see quality control in the crops you've grown. Finlay, do you get involved in that?
Yeah, there's a certain amount of that. There's a certain amount of when as I say, the farmers provide the labour for the harvesting, and then we for say broccoli and cauliflower, and then we kind of bring it into our central store, and then we bring it into the factory as and when it required. But yeah, we do have some. Me and Andrew will quite often be down in the factory through the summer and through the season, just seeing what quality is looking like, seeing what particular fields, particular farms have produced particular varieties. A lot of that, a lot of what we have to do is to constantly be looking for better varieties than what we've got. Are they better, better on diseases? Are they better on pests? And have they got a quality aspect that maybe outweighs other things? And the best way to see that sometimes is through the factory or in a supermarket shelf. I think every single person in here, I think on a weekend is rifling through various supermarkets, veg sections to see our stuff and make sure that it's looking grand. And that's a really useful thing to have feedback on, is to make sure that we're doing the right things at the right time.
Do you have your own in-house trials for things like varieties, or do you partner with other people to do that?
Depending on what crop responsibility you have between the team, everyone will be doing some trials through the season. We have pretty close ties with seed houses and seed manufacturers, and a lot of the time, if they'll be saying to us, don't look at that one, but that one I think suits what, they understand what our business is about. They understand what we're looking for. So, having that connection with these seed houses, certainly they'll bring us material that they think we should be looking at. And we also go to trial events down in, they mostly are in England, down in Lincolnshire and Boston, certainly for brassicas. We go down there in the end of the year, and it's a really big trials day. All this major seed houses have trial plots that they rear and grow, and we can get a right look at stuff and think, could that work in Scotland? Could that work in our system? So
I mentioned earlier that, sorry, I'm jumping around again. I mentioned earlier about the staff, but you're a big company. You've got a big presence. You do quite a bit of charity work, and what do you do? Do you have an open day? I mean, do you invite people onto the farm to see what's going on? I gather do you have sort of graduate schemes as well for young students? I can ask that to you, Andrew, if you like.
Yeah, so yeah, we've got two factories in Fife basically, and that sort of labour requirement is at the peak it's around 1,200 people between those two factories for the production works that's required to get the orders out of the door, and that peak time for us is probably Christmas and Easter are the two big times when there's a lot of volume needs packed and put out the door. So we've got a mix of labour pool for that, and there'll be sort of UK people, there'll be settled status Eastern Europeans, but a big part of that labour pool now is seasonal agricultural workers. So there's a scheme which allows people to come on a 6-month visa to carry out agricultural work, and we're actually quite reliant on that now for labour in the factory. So we're trying to reduce the amount of agency labour that we use day to day due to quality of that labour. And these guys who are coming on a SAWS visa for that 6 month, they're coming from countries like Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, these countries, and they're coming, they want to earn money, they've got a good work ethic, and they're getting on really well. And that's the same as the growers. They access that scheme as well. And that's the sort of labour that they use for hand harvesting cauliflower, broccoli, salads, etc., etc. So that kind of covers off the labour pools. And in terms of in-house, we've got a graduate scheme, we've got a trainee agronomist in the team at the moment, and we're sort of always open to anyone who wants to come. And we've had previous people here who have spent 6 months in different departments throughout the business. We've got a wide range of different bits of the business, whether it's supply chain, production. We've got a procurement team that look at they bring in anything that we can't grow in Scotland. We've got a team of people who look after that. There's a wide range, and we've got a management graduate scheme where somebody can come in and spend 6 months in each department, and then at the end of that sort of 2-year period, then they would be offered a job in one of those departments that they've preferred.
Yeah, interesting. So the SAWS scheme, just going back to that's the seasonal agricultural worker scheme, isn't it? And has it always been 6 months, or have they brought it down from 9 months? I mean, does 6 months suit you okay in terms of the amount of time they're allowed to stay here?
I think it's always been 6 months. So what happened previously was they used to, if they came across for 6 months, they then had to return home for 6 months. But they've actually shortened that return period to 4 months, so they can work here for 6 months and then come back after 4 months. So that's been a positive move. It's allowed us, the good or the better workers to come back quicker, because not all of them, not 100% are good, but certainly we've got the ability to sort of cherry pick the best ones and invite them back the following period, which is great for a field harvesting sort of business where that time scale fits really well, and that we can get returnees, and having that percentage of returning workers gives you a bit of continuity and how you're getting crops harvested.
Okay. It's all fascinating stuff. It's been really interesting talking to you. Just before we sort of close out, just talking about sort of market trends, where you think the business is sort of heading in the next 5 years. You probably have meetings and you sort of analyse the sort of success of different crops or consumer trends. Have you views on that, or do you see it really relatively unchanged in terms of the demand for what you're growing?
Yeah, I think the veg consumption is not really it's not in decline like potatoes. You know, fresh market potatoes. Is quite visibly in decline year on year. I think veg. Yeah. Um, I think that's down to its health. People are sort of viewing potatoes as it's a carbohydrate. They're more wanting to eat protein and fibre and all that sort of stuff. Veg is probably quite stable. And there is so few people. As Finlay already mentioned, involved in it. There's enough for everyone to get their teeth into. And yeah, we just keep doing what we're doing really, and
Mm,
yeah.
And Finley, how do you view the industry as a sort of I wouldn't say a newbie to the business, but someone with a big career ahead of you? It sounds a pretty stable industry to be in.
I would still describe myself as a newbie to the business. I think, as I say, I'm going into my fourth season, and I think the term "what's a normal season" has been used quite a lot over those 3 years. We've had big, wet periods with high rainfall, long amounts of, a long amount of rainfall, and then long periods of really, really dry, and everything in between. So, you never get a true season every year. So it's certainly something that an industry that keeps changing all the time. You have to be able to adapt to that change. And that's what keeps it interesting. That's what keeps it exciting. Especially with the crops I do are very short windows. You can be for anywhere from 90 to 120 days from planting to production. So you get to see that all the way through the season. It's fast moving and it's always changing. So I think as an industry, I've really really enjoyed my time in veg, and I can see myself in it for the long haul. To be honest, it's a vibrant industry, and yeah, it's certainly something that I'm really enjoying.
Yeah, especially if you're involved in the agronomy and the seed trialing, and like you say, there's so many variables in such a short space of time. It must be quite uh, stimulating, I would think, to be involved in growing them. Takeaway points. I mean, we've got farmers listening in. Is there any particular message you would like to impart as we close from what we've
I
discussed
think
today?
I think for me, which is quite comes up in conversation a lot around Christmas, is retailer promotions on vegetables. We see the retailers promoting a lot of crops that we grow and produce for 5 pence for a kilo bag of carrots, and from our growers' perspective, they find that really demoralising that happens, and they've invested a lot of money and a lot of time and effort and care in growing these crops to see them being promoted like that. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon with the retail environment. But I think consumers are going to expect that now. But it's a point that always kind of hankers on us around about that time. And yeah, as long as people are continuing to eat veg, and it is it's a healthy food, and just want to encourage everyone to keep eating it, and we'll keep producing it and trying to make the best job we can.
Yeah, yeah, super. And Finley, from you, I suppose if I was in your shoes, I would be sort of saying to younger people out there, it's a fascinating industry to get involved in.
And yeah, and I bore people to tears often on this. And my wife often rolls her eyes at me when I start banging on about broccoli and cauliflower to anyone that'll listen. But as I say, I knew Kettle, the industry. I knew of Kettle. I knew what they did, but now that I've been in the business and learning more and more about it, you just understand that there's fascinating topics everywhere. Every single crop has its unique thing that is an issue, and key times that have to be hit, and key decisions that have to be made to make sure that crop gets on. And I think we're quite lucky at Kettle Produce that we've actually got a huge amount of people that have worked here for 20, 25, 30 years plus. And I don't think there maybe is as many younger people going into the industry, but we need to listen and absorb as much as possible from people who have been there and done it, and more in the t-shirt, and that experience is absolutely crucial. But again, equally, you need younger people in to try and absorb that all and take the place and take the business forward. But it's a fascinating industry.
Yeah, I've been fascinated listening to you both. Thanks very much for coming on today. I wish you all the best for the rest of the season. Hope the different harvests go fine. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Cheers.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of CropCast. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please subscribe and follow so you don't miss the next episode. You may also enjoy some of our other Farm Advisory Service podcasts. This podcast was presented by myself, Mark Bowsher-Gibbs, produced by Heather Stuart, edited by Cameron Waugh, with executive producers Kirstyn Blackwood and Kerry Hammond. Come back next month in August to hear the next episode with Tiffany Stevenson.
The Farm Advisory Service Podcast. Audio advice on livestock, crops and soils, environment, rural business and more. Brought to you in association with the Scottish Government.